I'm going to talk a little bit about Luigi Mangione, the guy that killed or allegedly shot the CEO of UnitedHealthcare, Brian Thompson, about 2 weeks ago. When I first heard about this, I didn't really think much of it. I scanned some of the US headlines because I live in Thailand and I saw it and I was like, okay, whatever. And then the next day, someone asked me what I thought about it from the group and was saying that the guy had back pain and things. And then I started looking into it more because when I first saw him and I saw the photo, I was like, oh, okay. Structurally, he seems okay. So then when I started hearing that there was more to it, I figured I'd do some research. Who is he? He's a 26-year-old guy who grew up from a pretty wealthy family, went to an Ivy League school, UPenn, popular guy, seemingly fine, no mental health issues, seemingly. Was a follower of the Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski. There was some background to what he did. He complained of back pain, so he had a condition called spondylolisthesis. Probably not saying it right, but basically he had that as a kid, and you have like a slippage of the vertebrae. And he had a pretty bad surfing accident that he had to do back surgery for. They think that he aggravated this condition that he had since childhood. So the other thing that I thought was interesting was he has Lyme disease and brain fog. So Lyme disease is something that I've looked into in the past because it's very tightly correlated with TMJ. So TMJ is kind of the world that I was in and the angle that I came from, came at all of this from. TMJ and Lyme disease, they kind of mimic each other. A lot of people that have Lyme disease are initially misdiagnosed with TMJ. And I think Lyme disease, my view is the reason that you get Lyme disease is because there's issues structurally. And then when the tick bites you, you get it. Whereas if you were healthy and the tick bites you, you probably don't get it. Anyway, he had these conditions. I checked if there was any orthodontics in his history. There wasn't. And honestly, when I see him, he's got pretty good structure, good profile. And neurologically, he seems relatively healthy. I mean, the guy, I saw a picture and he was yelling at the press when he got arrested. And, you can tell he was a pretty confident guy. And usually when this stuff takes you down, the biomechanics, it kind of takes your balls in a way, right? You lose a lot of your courage and you probably wouldn't have the courage to do what he did. So I don't think he's a clear case of collapse. Having said that, I do think that these biomechanics I talk about would have helped him, and I'll explain why. So, he had back pain and he had brain fog. So obviously, in my view, there were structural things that were impacting him. The other thing is he's from a good family, had a good life, was a smart guy, had everything going for him, was young. And so you logically would not do something like this to ruin your own life. And the only things, the thing that I could think you conclude is that he was somewhat off his head. He was being influenced by things that were physical. Because he had no history of mental health issues and whatnot. So in my view, he was slightly off his head when he did this, and he probably regrets it now. And I don't think that these are the acts of someone who's kind of inherently evil and was always going to do this. I think this is the acts of someone who had pain and maybe other issues that were impacting them, and they were not thinking clearly, and they did this as a mistake. What I also would say is, I think that if he was wearing something like a rubber mouth guard, it would have taken some of this compression of his brain, and he would not have been off his head. I think he would have been thinking clearer and probably not have done this. No, I don't think he's a clear case of biomechanical collapse. But yes, I think some issues related to these biomechanics were impacting him and were probably impacting his thinking and his brain when he actually committed this act.